This is the Shrimp Trawler video channel Strat-O-Matic Baseball EXCEL Game of the Week.
Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1978-81 World Series. It'll be the California Angels versus the LA Dodgers, an all-California freeway series, I guess you could call it. The number 4 seeded Angels will be the road team. Dodgers have home field, number 3 seed. Let's see the road to getting here. What did each team do? We're going to go take a look at the regular season here. And we'll go look at the schedule. And it's a very unique schedule in that you play a possible 30 of 34 games within your division, with just 4 other games across the league. Let's start with the Angels and take a look at their schedule. So they open up against Oakland and Texas with home field, and then at Seattle. They would play Detroit 4 games, and then they're on the road against Oakland and Texas and home against Seattle. So California opened up the year by beating Oakland 3-2, and then they beat Texas 3-2, so they're 2 games over 500. But then they would lose 3 out of 4 to Seattle, so they're back to 500. They split the 4 games with the Tigers, and then after that, a very interesting finish. They are swept 3 straight by Oakland to go 3 under 500. Then they sweep Texas 3 straight, and they're back at 500. So they're sitting at 500 with just the Mariners on their schedule, and they beat the Mariners this time 3-1, finishing at just 2 games over 500. When you look at the overall standings for them, you see that the entire division couldn't even get to 500. So just 2 games over 500 for California. Once the playoffs started, they caught fire. They beat Milwaukee in a wild card game, and then they swept Cleveland 3 straight in a divisional round, and then they beat Baltimore 4-2 in the league championship series. So they were 8-2 recently, 6 over 500, and you see they're now 8 over 500. And then in the National League, it's very similar. 23-15 for the Angels, 24-15 for the Dodgers. It's a very similar script. We'll look at that again. Dodgers open their season at Houston, and then they're home for the Padres, at the Giants, and they have a 4-game set with the Cardinals, then home against Astros, at the Padres, home against the Giants. So how did they perform? Well, they opened up the year by taking 3-2 against Houston. Then they lost, incredibly, 3 out of 4 to the Padres to go a game under, and then 3 out of 4 to the Giants to go 3 under. Split with the Cardinals. In the second half, they would win all their series. They took 3-2 against Houston to get 2 under, and then 3-1 against the Padres and Giants to get 2 over 500. Just at the end, just at the whistle, you could say. They get back to 2 over 500. And what does that mean out west? Well, really the Astros had a chance, but they couldn't get past 500. So just a 2-game over 500 Dodger team has blitzed through the National League. In the wild card game, they beat the Cubs. In the divisional round, they took 3 straight from Portland. And in the league championship series, they took 4 out of 5 for Atlanta. Just a game better than what the Angels have done. They're 8-1 since going 2 over 500, which makes them 9 games over 500 at 24-15. Let's take a look at the pitching matchups for the World Series. The Angels, it's going to be 2 games, a day off, 3 games, a day off, and 2 games. So the pitchers will have enough rest. One guy can go 3, and the Angels have chosen Frank Tanana to go 3. We've seen Nolan Ryan pitch a lot, but he just pitched a game 6 against Baltimore So he doesn't have enough time off to start the World Series. Don Sutton does, because they blitzed the Braves 4-1. So he has enough time to be the Game 1 starter. So we'll see Tanana and Sutton in 1, Nolan Ryan, Bert Hooton in 2. A day off, number 3 starter Paul Hartzell for the Angels against Rick Sutcliffe, who's leaped over Jim Umbarger for the 3 spot. We go back to Tanana and Sutton in 4, back to Ryan and Hooton in 5. Then what should set up to be an interesting Game 6, it's the Angels sending lefty Ross Baumgarten against lefty Jim Umbarger. This could be a wild affair. And then for the 3rd and final time, Frank Tanana versus Don Sutton. Let's look at the stats of the two teams. And also, it's been a very kind of a cool year. The Angels, it's like a 2-man pitching staff with Ryan and Tanana. And here we are at the current stats of that team. So you see, here's Ryan, here's Tanana. I mean, pretty much having similar years. Tanana gets the start. He's 8-1. Ryan's 8-1. You see, he'll get the start 3 games. He may match up better against Sutton. Ryan and Tanana. And then Clear has been a decent closer. 16 walks and 16 strikeouts, however, as a closer with 7 saves. You also have the number Ross Baumgarten is 1-4, but he's pitched better than that with a 3.80 ERA. Ralston has done a decent job as the only lefty in the bullpen. He's actually a former Dodger with a 3.94 ERA. And after that, it gets shaky. The long men, Dyer Miller and Jim Barr, have been awful. And Paul Hartzell is 1-6 with a 9.54 ERA. His one win happened in that postseason run that you saw. Obviously, since they only lost 2 games. Or actually, they lost 2 games to Baltimore. Brian Downing's having a magnificent year, as you can expect. His card, it's 326. But he's 324. Ron Jackson, 318. Don Baylor, MVP kind of year, 296 hitter. Rich, all these guys are doing what the cards say they should do. Lancer's a little under. He has 300 with his card. He's down to 278. And there's really no noticeable failure other than this John Harris performance. This is very strange. So the Angels are right-handed heavy. You may have noticed that. And so they originally only had 1 or 2 lefties on the whole team. They went out and got a grand total of 4. Molinaro, who was a White Sox, at 265. Tim Johnson was a Brewer at 244. Pokeroba, switch hitter, at 205. John Harris is actually the only Angel. He played for them in 1981 at 247, but he's hitting half at 247. He's hitting 123. No home runs, 5 RBIs, and he's your first baseman. Very strange. And so Ron Jackson might get more of the starts at first base in the World Series. Go to the Dodgers. Again, they're just a half game better, really. And when we look at their pitching staff, the thing that stands out the most is this brilliant bullpen right here. Hal's the closer with 7 saves. Castillo sets him up with 3 more. Forster having 2. This is a great way of playing Strat in this carryover league. Having 2 outstanding lefty relievers and going lefty, righty, lefty when you can. It's very opportunistic. And Forster's been great as well. Tom Bruno has been the long man called in to pitch when Jim Umbarger comes out of games as the number 3 starter. Don Sutton's 8-3 with a 2.56 ERA. Sutcliffe and Hooton have been ordinary, but okay. Good enough for a winning kind of club. And there's that Umbarger line. 36 in the 3rd inning, 69 hits, 8.42 ERA. So it's up to this Dodger bullpen to bail out when the Angels start to rally. And the bats for the Dodgers, Steve Garvey, having a magnificent year. 323, 9-33. You'll see these 52 home runs are nicely distributed by a bunch of guys. It's not one guy carrying the team like Mike Schmidt or Willie Stargell. It's a bunch of guys with 7, 8, or 9 home runs. Kirk Gibson, brought in from the Tigers with some speed and batting average. Also some strikeouts, 32 of them. Baker, 293 with 8 home runs. Reggie Smith, Lando Stoy kind of platoons with Bill Russell. He's having a nice batting average. Russell 245. Scioscia doing a nice Mike Scioscia kind of year right there, 273. Willie Horton was a 265 hitter. That's what he's doing with 7 homers in 98 at-bats. That's not bad at all. Ron Cey, a little 261. That's a Ron Cey kind of year. Davey Lopes is the only guy who's under the radar in batting average, but he makes up for it with his 28 stolen bases and his 30 walks. 351 on base, so we'll forgive Davey for the 228 batting average. And Jim Norris is just another left-handed bat who can play corner outfield defense. That's a look at your Dodgers. And now, the opening lineups for each team. Today's starting pitchers from LA, it'll be Frank Tanana for the Angels. I'll read the stats off his card for you. 18-12 with a 3.65 ERA and 239 innings in 1978. And the Dodgers will send Don Sutton out there in 1980. 13-5 with a 2.21 ERA and 212 innings. And now, the lineups for Game 1. And then after that, we'll conclude the video and begin the World Series tomorrow. But your World Series lineup leading off for the Angels, the 1981 Carney Lansford, 336, did it with Boston in 430 some plate appearances. Angels held on to him. They're going to trade for Doug DeCinces in the offseason, as he would help the Angels by 1982. Batting second, the left fielder, Bob Molinaro, 1980, 291 hitter with 380 some at bats. Very quick player, ace stealer, good base runner, one-way platoon, brought him in to be a left-handed hitter on the team. Batting third, and could have been a most valuable Angel, along with all the really Downing, Grich, Baylor, Ford, Jackson. They could all be MVP. They just like the Dodgers, they share their talent pretty well here. No one outlies more than anybody else. Brian Downing's 326, 586 at bats for a catcher. Doesn't really need a backup. Batting fourth, Bobby Grich, also in 79, hit 294 with 30 home runs. Arguably his best year, at least with power. Batting fifth actually is your American League MVP of 1979, Don Baylor. Right in the middle of all those numbers of the previous guys you just saw. 296 batting average with 36 home runs, 71 walks, 33 doubles, ace stealer. Could do it all, except field and throw. Was very good at that. Now batting sixth, here's this guy, John Harris. We mentioned him earlier. 1981 in 77 at-bats, he had 247, but he did have 3 home runs, and he's in a one-way platoon, as they need left-handed batters on this team. Batting seventh, the center fielder, who was batting eighth most of the time during the season. They bumped him up to seventh, feeling they needed a little more juice against the Dodgers. Dan Ford's going to play center field. He's been doing it all year. 290 batting average, 21 home runs, and 600 plate appearances. Mostly known as a corner outfielder, but he can play 2 in center field, and that's what they've decided to do. Batting eighth, your first baseman, with John Harris moving to designated hitter and Biff Pocorobo being put on the bench, is Ron Jackson. He is playing first today because he has power versus righties, where Sutton gives up homers to righties. Ron hit 297 in 1978. He'll also have a 330 year coming up sometime in the future. In 400 plate appearances for the Angels in 78. And batting ninth, your shortstop, is Tim Johnson, another left-handed bat. Was a Blue Jay in 78 with 90 plate appearances, has some walks, and he's reasonable. He's a 4.17, can play short and second. On the bench, you have his platoon partner, Fred Patek. Good glove, making up for Tim Johnson's lack of it. Good base stealer, not much punch. 248 batting average and 480 plate appearances. Did it with Kansas City in 78. Then you have Bill Sample, a nice little corner outfielder, an E0 outfielder, which is interesting. Power against lefties. He's in a platoon with Molinaro. In 340 some plate appearances, he also hit 292. Bunch of 290 hitters on the Angels. Pretty darn close to 300. Close as you can get, I guess. So Sample, yeah, nice little player here. He was a Texas Ranger in '79. And the last guy on the bench is Biff Pocoroba. Switch hitting catcher, not known for his defense, known as a pinch hitter in the National League. At 265. Switch hitter in this year, he's sometimes only a left-handed batter. The rest of the Angel pitching staff, we talked about it. Nolan Ryan, 16-14 with a 3.59 ERA in 223 innings. Has pitched magnificently in the postseason to this point, and he'll get the start in Game 2. Paul Hartzell, in '78 for the Angels, was 6-10 with a 3.44 ERA in 157 innings. He's had some tough luck this year. They need him to pitch better. You can't win a World Series with just two guys. The number 4 starter is Ross Baumgarten. 1980, he pitched well, had a horrible record. He was 2-12 with the White Sox, but he had a 3.44 ERA in 136 innings. Angels went and got him. In the bullpen, Jim Barr. He was a starter relief for the Giants in '78, 8-11 with a 3.53 ERA in 163 innings. He actually plays for the Angels, I think, in the early '80s. Former Oriole Dyer Miller in '78 for the Angels was 6-2 with a 2.65 ERA in 85 innings. Little susceptible to walks versus lefties. Your lefty setup guy, former Dodger, and the Dodgers probably could use this guy. Well, I guess they don't need him because they have Forster and Hal, but Lance Ralston in '78 had a 2.95 ERA in 61 innings. He's your lefty setup guy. He's decent. And the closer is Mark Clear. His last really good year for the Angels in '80, 11-11 with a 3.31 ERA in 106 innings, only gave up 2 home runs, but he did walk 65 and struck out 105. Eventually he gets traded to Boston. It doesn't work out there for him, and then he moves on from there. That's the California Angels. Now your LA Dodgers. Leading off, second baseman Davey Lopes, 1979 card, and you're going to see a lot of big name Dodger players from the year of '79 when they didn't go to the playoffs. Dodgers went to the playoffs in '78 and '81. Davey Lopes in '79 hit .265 with 28 home runs, 97 walks, and it's a double-A stealer at second base. Batting second, the 1978 Reggie Smith, .295, 29 homers, 70 walks, still got the great arm, still makes a bunch of errors in the outfield and loses his range. Batting third, Steve Garvey, arguably a year better than his '74 MVP year, hit .315 with 28 home runs, has the Gold Glove first base, and it's Steve Garvey. Batting fourth, third baseman Ron Cey crushes lefties also in the year of '79 with 28 home runs, a .281 batting average, 86 walks, outstanding defense at third base, .211. Bats clean up against lefties because of all the power, and they down in the lineup against righties. Batting fifth, Kirk Gibson, 1981, year of the strikes, who only has 300 plate appearances, but he did hit .328. Has speed, he'll be playing center field with a -1 arm. Against lefties, he bats fifth because of all the hits. He bats second against righties to get that speed in there. Batting sixth, your left fielder is Dusty Baker. .294 batting average, 29 homers in 1980. This is the first 80 card, I think, in this bunch. In 600 some plate appearances. Great defense at left field at .283. Much better against righties than lefties, so that's why he's batting sixth here. Batting seventh, your shortstop, 1978 Bill Russell, .286. 655 plate appearances, arguably his best batting average and participation year for the Dodgers. Defense is still pretty mediocre, .333. His speed's not there, but his bat handling is. He's still an AB, 1 of 17. Bill Russell, batting seventh. Batting eighth, he's a Seattle Mariner in '79 as a DH, and of course all clubs have DHs in the carryover league. Willie Horton, 29 homers, a .279 batting average, and 688 plate appearances as a full-time DH. Mariners didn't need him. The Dodgers said, "Come west, Willie, come west. We could use a DH, even one that bats eighth in our lineup." Imagine that. 29 homers out of your number 8 hitter. And batting ninth, catching versus the lefty Tanana, is Alex Trevino. He was a Met in '79, hit .271, not known for power, known for a pretty good defense. Mostly, yeah, this guy would have a nice long career in the 1980s. As a platoon player, with up and down batting average, pretty decent defense. Also some other positional versatility. Can play second and third here. Alex Trevino. And on the bench, we have the other catcher against righties is Mike Scioscia, who at 276 in 1981 with the Dodgers got a World Series ring with that card and 300 and some plate appearances. Good B-hit runner, -1 arm catcher. Jim Norris, corner outfielder for the Cleveland Indians in 1978 at 283. He's here on the Dodgers just to give them an extra left-handed bat if they want. Defense at first, at right field for Reggie Smith makes fewer errors. And if Steve Garvey were to get hurt, yeah, Norris could have him play first base. And lastly, the other shortstop on the bench, platooning with Bill Russell, is Rafael Landistoi. He could play anywhere in the infield or outfield as a switch hitter. In 78 for the Astros at 266 and 226 plate appearances. He is a good reserve player for the Dodgers. Their pitching staff, we have Sutton starting today. Game 2 starter Bert Hooton. 1978, he was 19-10 with a 2.71 ERA and 236 innings. A starter 8, which is actually better than Sutton's starter 7. That could come into play. The next pitcher, Rick Sutcliffe, started the year in the 4-hole. He moved up to the 3-hole because of Umbarger's ineffectiveness. 79, I think he might have been a Rookie of the Year or candidate for that. 17-10 with a 3.46 ERA in 242 innings. Had some problems with his control after that, and then he finally righted the ship when he went to the Cubs in 84. Jim Umbarger, the most curious player on the team. 1978 Texas Ranger, 5-8 with a 4.87 ERA in 98 innings, but the Dodgers had to get a lefty starter. The cookie jar was raided. Jerry Royce was taken away by Portland. You also lost Doug Rowell to retirement. Fernando Valenzuela was drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks. They stole him away from the Dodgers just to be competitive. So Umbarger is the current lefty until another lefty starter comes around. Maybe they'll get Rick Honeycutt next year. In the bullpen, you've got longman Tom Bruno, a 1978 Cardinal with a 1.98 ERA in 50 innings. A relief 4, starter 7. That's outstanding versatility there in both roles. Then you've got Terry Forster, another great lefty in 78 for the Dodgers with a 1.94 ERA in 65 innings. Could be a closer or setup guy for most teams. He's the third guy in the bullpen. Your setup guy and a couple guys back-to-back in 1980 for a Dodgers team that did not win the West, but was very talented. 1980 Bobby Castillo, 8-6, 2.76 ERA in 98 innings. Followed up by closer Steve Howe, 7-9, 2.65 ERA in 85 innings. Nice tandem of Castillo and Howe closing out for the Dodgers in 1980. And that is your World Series preview. We will begin tomorrow and wrap up the World Series Super Bowl weekend. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.